These are all 7 forms of Yuji Itadori, but you need to pay close attention because his final form in the Modulo era reveals that Yuji might not have been human for a very long time. Let's start at the very beginning with this technically weakest form, Yuji Itadori's human form. And did you know that in this form there was a hidden secret that was never revealed, even at the end of the story, and might actually prove that Yuji is the final villain of JJK Modulo? Before the rooftop incident in chapter 1, we got to see the sheer absurdity of his base stats. In this form, Yuji looks like your typical high schooler, with spiky pink hair, a hoodie, and a vibe that screams I'd rather be playing arcade games. But beneath that, he was a monster. We're talking about a kid who could run a meter dash in 3 seconds, and toss a shot put like he was skipping a stone across a lake. But we don't see him using techniques here, obviously. He was just a brawler who relied on raw, unrefined instinct and strength. But he was smart, not book smart, but combat genius smart. He could read her situation and react to threats with zero hesitation. Honestly, he had more composure facing a grade 2 curse than most people have when their Wi-Fi goes out. It was his ability to perceive and interact with the supernatural while being a normal human that set him apart. But even that freakish strength isn't his best attribute at this stage. When Yuji stood his ground against the crawling curse at his high school to save Megumi, he wasn't a sorcerer yet. He was just a boy with a soul so stable and a will so ironclad that he could host the King of Curses without losing his mind. And this physical anomaly hints that Yuji might never have been human to begin with. Sure, later it was revealed that he was Kenjaku's son and a reincarnation of Sukuna's twin, but everyone assumed he just had a stronger body and an affinity to curse energy. But after consuming the death wombs, Yuji is on the verge of becoming a true god in Modulo. Now if you think about it, there's a chance any other human could have been in that school that night. If anyone else had swallowed that finger just to survive, Sukuna would have taken over completely and instantly. He would have slaughtered Megumi right there on the roof, moved on to the rest of school, and the series would have ended before the first opening theme. With Gojo being the only one who could stop him and Sukuna being at the heart of a high school, the collateral damage would have been a catastrophe. Yuji didn't just eat a finger, he acted as a cage for the greatest disaster in history. Now let's talk about the first time Yuji truly changed, the Sukuna vessel form. And if Sukuna had been just a little less patient when he first took over this body, the series wouldn't have been called Jujutsu Kaisen at all. It would have been called the era of total annihilation. Yuji entered this state in chapter 1 right after swallowing that crusty great special finger on their school rooftop. In this state, Yuji's body doesn't change much physically, but the vibe shift is terrifying. 2 slit-like markings appear under his eyes when the King of Curses takes the driver's seat. Jagged black tattoos spread across his skin like a virus. It's the first time we see the double eyes and that iconic arrogant smirk. This is also where we first see his real superpower, Divergent Fist. It's a glitch in his curse energy strike, where his punch lands first, and the energy hits a split second later. It's basically a double impact move that caught seasoned sorcerers off guard. Even though Yuji was a total rookie, his physical body was so tough it could handle the massive strain of Sukuna's presence. When Sukuna briefly took control, he played with a grade 2 curse like it was a chew toy, regenerating Yuji's lost limbs in seconds and claiming the school as his own. But here's where things stop making sense. Sukuna is the ultimate strategist. He's the King of Curses who lived through the Golden Age and knows every trick in the book. So why, when he first manifested, did he just stand there ranting about flesh and women instead of instantly killing Megumi and Gojo while they were still figuring out what happened? He actually stood there giving a villain monologue, openly revealed his bloodlust, and didn't even try to escape or find the other 19 fingers immediately. Unless he deliberately wanted to test the limits of Yuji's soul. This Curse King, who knew exactly how powerful he was, shouldn't have let a brat suppress him so easily. But he did, for some reason. And that reason might be that he probably already sensed the speciality of Megumi and the 10 Shadows which he wanted to hijack. So he sat tight in Yuji's body, waiting patiently until the culling games. Otherwise, even if Gojo could suppress him, there's a good chance he could have escaped and done God knows what. After that, we have the most versatile and high-octane form of Yuji. If Yuji had mastered the mental state required for this form just a few weeks earlier, the tragedy at Shibuya would have looked a lot different. I'm talking about Yuji's The Zone form, or the Black Flash user form. We saw this form for the first time during the Goodwill event at Kyoto, after Yuji spent time training with his best friend, Aoi Todo. After struggling to control his cursed energy, Yuji finally stopped thinking and started feeling the spark of black. He enters a state of total immersion. It's not just a power-up, it's a psychological shift. In this form, Yuji's eyes glow with a primal intensity, and his body is trailed by arcs of black, distorted lightning. Not only does this multiply his physical power by roughly 2.5, but it also increases his understanding of cursed energy itself. Yuji transitioned from a clumsy brawler into a precision machine, landing a record-breaking 4 consecutive black flashes against Hanami. After Todo pushed his mental limits, Yuji stopped relying on the leg of his divergent fist and started hitting with 100% efficiency. He became so tuned in that he could land these hits almost at will, something even grade 1 sorcerers couldn't do consistently. We also see Yuji use this zone to keep up with special grade curses that should have outclassed him in every category. But here's the catch. This form doesn't give him a new weapon, it gives him a peak state, very much like Aang's avatar state and total awareness. With this ability, as long as Yuji stays in the flow, he can bridge the gap between a human and a god. Still, imagine what he could have done if he used this ability more strategically. Particularly after he learned to hit the soul directly, he almost became a hard counter to any cursed spirit in existence. Now imagine what could have happened if Yuji entered the zone the moment he stepped into Shibuya, before Sukuna ever had the chance to wake up. Mahito wouldn't have just been beaten. He would have been erased before he ever had the chance to evolve. Coming up is one of the most versatile phases of Yuji's growth. It's definitely not his most flashy look, but this form actually changed the entire power dynamic of the series. And if it wasn't for this specific shift, the plan to take down Sukuna wouldn't have worked at all. It's the soul-soaked vessel form. Unlike his other transformation, we don't see a massive physical explosion of energy here. Instead, this form is a result of what Sukuna left behind after he jumped into Megami's body. In this form, Yuji's appearance gets a lot grittier. He's covered in scars, his eyes are sharper, and he starts wearing heavy armored gauntlets that look like monster claws. It's almost like his body is trying to physically manifest the demon he was forced to hold for so long. This form doesn't really increase Yuji's speed or strength by a massive margin. Instead, it increases soul awareness and his physical resilience to a level that shouldn't be possible for a human. Apart from that, he still had his regular brawler abilities, but now they were infused with soul logic. He could hit the gap between Sukuna's soul and Megami's body, effectively acting like a wedge to pry them apart. He also gained access to blood manipulation and a high-speed healing factor that made him look less like a sorcerer and more like an unkillable zombie. In this form, he even started displaying shrine slashes, increasing his range and versatility for the first time in his life. During the final gauntlet, Yuji used this form to tank hits that would have vaporized anyone else. While other sorcerers were busy providing support and glazing the heavy hitters like Yuta and Maki, Yuji took the chance to jump into the center of the storm. That's when we saw his next form, the True Awakening, in action for the first time. And now we have the form that officially turned the tides of the final war, the Awakened Shrine form. The only version of Yuji Itadori that recorded a definitive head-to-head victory against the King of Curses himself. After months of being pushed to his limit, Yuji's body finally shed its human constraints and fully adapted to cursed energy he had been soaked in for so long. And he ended up becoming something much more dangerous, a muscular, rugged powerhouse with physical mutations that finally reflected the demon god he had become. In this awakening, apart from his usual insane durability, Yuji finally unlocked his innate technique, Shrine. But unlike Sukuna's version, Yuji's slashes are visually distinct, often appearing as soul boundary cuts that look like jagged stitches across the air. He also mastered the ability to use blood manipulation, specifically Supernova and Convergence, which he gained by absorbing his younger brothers, the remaining Death Womb paintings. Yuji ambushed Sukuna in this form and got into a brutal fistfight with the same monster who had just killed Gojo Satoru. The same Sukuna that had wrecked the entire Jujutsu High roster was actually forced onto the defensive by Yuji's relentless pressure and soul-shaking strikes. Even when Sukuna unleashed the world-cutting slash and attempted to dismantle Yuji's body, Yuji just regenerated through reverse curse technique, used his blood to reattach his limbs, and broke Sukuna's composure in just a couple of hits. Everyone knows that Raw, Dismantle, and Cleave were the only specialties Sukuna's really relied on to end fights instantly. But in the face of awakened Yuji, those slashes fail to stop his advance. That alone tells us how dangerous Yuji had become in this form. It's not just confirmed by his stats, but his tactical intelligence peaked here too. He wasn't just swinging wildly anymore, he was calculating every strike to specifically target the gap between Sukuna and Megumi. The boy who was once just a simple cage had finally become the master of the soul logic required to end the King of Curses. Let's talk about the form that actually ended the war, the Domain Expansion form. And don't forget, I still have his last form waiting for you, the Guardian Legend form, which is what we see in the year 2086 in JJK Modulo. But before that, back to the Domain Expansion form, the only form in the series that turned the King of Curses into a regular, terrified man. If you think this was just another punching power-up, you missed the point of Yuji's entire journey. Yuji unlocked this form in the absolute climax of Shinjuku Showdown, right when Sukuna thought he had finally won. In this form, the physical mutations from his previous demon form actually vanish. Yuji doesn't look like a monster anymore, he looks like his normal high school self, but with an aura of absolute authority. The form here isn't just body, it's the entire reality he creates around it. He pulls Sukuna into a domain that looks like a peaceful, snowy train station in Yuji's hometown. It's the ultimate anti-Sukuna form because it strips away all the blood and violence, forcing his opponent to face his own soul. This form doesn't boost Yuji's physical strength like his previous one did, instead it grants him the sure-hit soul dismantle. Inside this space, Yuji's slashes aren't just invisible, they are unavoidable. He can literally edit the connection between a curse and its host with a single thought. Apart from the sure-hit attack, he also gained the ability to impart his own memories and emotions directly into the enemy's mind. We see him walking Sukuna through his childhood, showing him the value of human life. He took the most powerful version of Sukuna in history and systematically reduced him to nothing. Even with all of Sukuna's experience, he was completely helpless inside Yuji's world. If not for Yuji's inherent kindness, offering Sukuna a chance to live as a pathetic curse, he could have ended the fight in just the first 5 seconds. But that mercy is what defines this form. It's not about being a demon anymore, it's about being a human who has surpassed the need for violence. But as the battle ended and the dust settled, the aftermath of using this much power triggered one last evolution. And that's when we get to see his most mysterious form ever. It's the form that officially bridges the gap between the original story and the year 2086, the Guardian Legend. The only form of Yuji Itadori that exists as a living ghost. And if the modern generation of sorcerers in Modulo didn't have this version of Yuji watching from the shadows, the new threats from the outer domains would have wiped out humanity in a single week. We see the weight of this form in the official Modulo era, decades after the Shinjuku incident. In this form, Yuji doesn't look like the 15-year-old kid we knew. He's much older now, appearing as a man in his late 80s. But because of the physiological changes from the death paintings and Sukuna's lingering energy, he still possesses the physical frame of a man in his prime. He has a calm, weathered face, and his hair has turned a striking silver white. But here's the most important part of his design. He has shed the monstrous, red-scaled arms from the Shinjuku War. Instead, his arms are now etched with refined black markings that wrap around his forearms like permanent seals. They don't look like a mutation anymore, they look like a badge of office. These markings represent how he fully integrated shrine and blood manipulation into his very DNA. In this form, he doesn't just rely on punches anymore. Yuji has evolved into a soul logic master. He has reached a level of enlightenment where he can manipulate the cursed energy of the atmosphere without even moving his hands. He's no longer a vessel for a curse, he's the vessel for the world itself. Apart from his insane physical stats, which have actually increased with age, he now has the ability to soul link. He can project his consciousness into the minds of new sorcerers like Yuka and Tsurugi, acting as a mental guide during their battles. He also possesses a passive domain, which is an aura of peace that automatically neutralizes low-level curses just by him being in the vicinity. One of the most legendary feats of this form isn't a fight we see on screen, but the fact that he effectively became a nuclear deterrent. Because Yuji is still alive, no major curse or alien king has yet to fully manifest in Japan. He is the anchor that keeps a modern world from falling back into the Heian era chaos. But here's the catch. This form is a paradox. Yuji is technically immortal because his soul is too stable to pass on, but he's also the most human character in the series. Just imagine what would happen if Yuji ever decided to stop being a guardian. Without his soul logic keeping the balance, the entire modulo era would collapse under the weight of its own curse energy. Now it's obvious that Yuji is the strongest sorcerer left in the world, but how does he compare to the absolute peak of the golden age of sorcery?